Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the video. A couple of days ago, at this point in time, I was just having a nice little pleasant rest, and the wife Raven comes through and is like, "Oh, there's been someone trying to contact you on Discord. I think you might know who it is." And it was like Sir Piggles. I was like, "Yeah, I know who Sir Piggles is, but why is he contacting me?" So I was up like a lightning bolt and through to my PC, and yes. If you remember from my video talking about the Nomad, Piggles was the main source of information for what I was talking about in that video. He is a member of the SC Leaks sort of podcasts, and yeah, I was talking about the information that they talked about in their stream, and he'd got in contact because he wanted to talk more and outreach kind of thing. That's a big part of this sort of, it's a big thing to do. So yeah, we got together earlier on today and we had a sort of interview, so to speak. Sort of like I had several questions and it was all sort of about Star Citizen, the tech, that sort of thing. And to be honest, he's probably one of the best people to talk to that is not from CIG themselves, because outside of their employees, no one probably knows much more about their tech, about what they're building, that sort of side of things, than him, because that's his hobby. He goes in and has a rummage and sees what he can find. So it was great having the chance to have a conversation with him, and I'm gonna stop rambling because we're not here to listen to me here ramble. We're here for the Piggles interview with a juicy, hot off the press little finisher, so to speak. So yes, hope you all enjoy the interview. I'll see you all next time. One thing quickly before we go to the interview, I forgot to mention, if you're wanting to hear more of Piggles, the best ways to do that would be hitting up SC Leaks on YouTube. Link, I'll try and remember to leave a link in the description. If I don't, notify me and then I'll rectify that. And same with the SC Leaks Discord. They are the two main and best places to find them and hear more of what he has got to let us know. So yeah, now really to the interview. Right, so I thought we'd start things off with the sort of thing that give everyone the right impression right from the get-go of like who you are and what you do. And that is, could you describe what you do? Like, are you a data miner? What is data mining? And well, even as you said, as we were talking earlier, you don't even consider that. You see yourself more as a modder. Would you just want to elaborate?
Yeah, so I got into modding with Star Citizen back in 2018, and I joined a community called Citizens Reactor, which I've now ended up running. So I kind of head that up, and I ended up getting into the leak side on the side when the whole YouTube and streaming thing started. And that modding kind of allowed me to bring all those lovely visuals of things like the Idris and the Javelin and the Kraken that we've all showed off, and part of that has come into data mining. And the thing with the data mining is there's so much to go through, so I don't find anything either, so I get some huge amounts of help from other people in the community as well. They'll send me things or go, "Oh, could you have a look at this? Maybe I've forgotten about that," and it's things like that. So it's generally kind of getting my hands on a build, sinking my teeth into it, seeing what I can find and pull out and play with, and showing that off to everyone else.
Yes. Sounds similar to like how lots of people get into it. Like they just sort of have similar interests, then they dip their toe in and then they're sucked in.
Yeah.
Right, so if that was like the just general who you were kind of question, this one will jump right into the deep end. CIG are always talking about their current limitations with bottlenecks and that sort of thing, and how up and coming tech is going to help them overcome these limitations. Is it just a matter of time until they overcome enough of these obstacles to allow them to see for CR's vision to become realized, or is there other things that you expect to get in their way, or just what do you think?
Well, there's That's quite a hard question because there's lots of different tech. I mean, the big ones at the moment we're looking at is server meshing and iCache. They're the two big names that everyone thinks of when they think, oh, what tech are we limited by? But it's not this one kind of Jesus tech that we want that opens the floodgates. If you kind of get what I'm going for,
Yeah.
and it's this build up of systems on systems on systems until we can really just throw content in a massive scale. Now that's not to say that it's not possible to do now, because it definitely is, but these technical limitations, they make it really infeasible to actually throw content in on such a huge scale, or actually have it perform well enough for it to even be playable.
The two analogies I like to think of for that sort of stuff is like a really long chain, and each new piece of tech is just the next link in the chain, or like a big jigsaw, and each new piece of tech they come up with, say server meshing or the iCache, is just one part of the jigsaw for it all to come together.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. Each new step, each new tech is another step in the right direction till we've got a whole complete puzzle, as you would put it.
So if that was like the sledgehammer talking about tech of questions, what a bit more of a scalpel? Like the last year it was all about socks. They kept on talking about socks, but this year it's server meshing and the iCache. What do you feel about them in particular?
I think they're both actually really, really integral parts of what you want to make the Chris Roberts initial vision true. Because as I'm sure most people know, iCache is this system, this tech developed to remember the states of locations. Say you could leave a marker in a forest somewhere on the planet, you could come back a month later and still see that marker. But the problem with that is, how do you know when you get to the point where there's too much? When do you clean up clutter? And that's a really big integral part of how we move forward. And then server meshing is hugely important. Star Citizen as an MMO, in how Chris appears to want to move it forward, it isn't possible without something similar to server meshing. And right now they're looking at these two implementations or method that they're doing it. So what the initial look at is what they're calling static server meshing. So that would be something like a split between Stanton and Pyro, for example. As you transition from Stanton to Pyro, there's no loading screen other than maybe obviously the jump point. You just transition into the other server with no loading screen, no seams. It's just in and out. You don't even know you're in a different server. And that would be kind of fixed server for one place. And the dynamic server meshing that they're really looking for would be able to allocate more server resources to a particular location, and also allocating them to locations depending on popularity. So somewhere like Port Olisar, for example, right now I'd say that's a relatively high player density popular location in the game. So that would have a lot of server resources dedicated to it by default, and you can adjust that by adding more or taking away as needed, and through that you can also interact with the other locations. Say there's another fight happening in the middle of space, but there's not many players at Port Olisar. You could take some resources away from there because they're not needed, and allocate them to the region of space that fight is happening in.
It's a bit like the jigsaw analogy I was using earlier, but instead of tech, it'll just be servers on its own, all working together to run the game.
Yeah, it's like layering servers up to get the best possible performance in every single location without wasting server resources.
That's those two things pretty much covered. We'll move on to the next question then. I've heard this accusation a couple of times against CIG, and it is there are some people that believe that when it comes to, say, releasing a ship and the coding and that they do in the background, they often apparently cut corners, according to these people, that they're just going to have to go back and fix later. What's your opinion on this? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I don't see. I've never seen evidence of a cut corner in making a ship. Now, obviously, there's ships that have been built prior to their their main gameplay systems actually coming online. So if we take the Reclaimer, for example, right now that's just a pretty ship you can look at and fly around. It's entirely useless apart from the cargo bay, which is quite small for a ship of its size. And that's not, I wouldn't call that a case of cutting corners. Mainly because they built that ship with the intention of this salvage mechanic coming online at a later date. They've built it ready for that. It's the same way that the Karak, for example, that we've got at the moment. Most of the exploration stuff isn't available, but it's got everything in there ready to just plug it in and go once it is ready.
I never seen any of it as sort of like cutting corners personally. I always thought of it more of as like, well, two things. One, there's no point fine-tuning things when you're just going to have to tear it apart and redo it again in a week anyway. And the other, as you say, was we're waiting on tech to come online for those specific gameplay loops and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's spot on. Everything's kind of a balancing act of, well, we want to put out more ships, but we need to finish this gameplay first, and it's things like that.
Okay, right. So we'll move on to the next question then. When you, a patch has just been released. What sort of thing really excites you? What are you looking for when you first crack open that patch and you start having a wee mind?
So it really depends on the content of the patch, what I'm expecting and what CIG have announced previously or that we've heard from sources and other things. When it comes to Evocati patches, I'm specifically looking for anything that might have accidentally been left in the build. They tend to not have as much oversight as they on them and what they leave in the build before it goes out, and that's how I could confirm that the Nomad and the Mercury are both flight ready for the IAE, of course. And actually, more interestingly, in the recent PTU patch that came out, I think it was yesterday, they actually tried to remove a lot of the references to those, but they didn't quite get all of them because there's still some there. So there's definitely a bit of that, but personally for me, it's quite boring for most people, but I'm really interested in the tech behind everything, so I'll look and see how everything's changed, kind of under the hood, see what's different. But apart from that, there's also things like audio files. We may find something explaining a mission or giving away something. I think there was someone posted some audio files on the Star Citizen subreddit yesterday that had some stuff to do with some upcoming ships of the IAE. We also look in the localization. We look for any strings that might change, that might give away something, and we can predict lots of things from stuff that gets left in there. We can also look in the game's database. So any ships, they're normally in there, and you can get loads of information. You can get the size, type, you name it. If you're looking for information, that's the best place to look at it. And you also look for things just like loadouts, models, textures. It's really a goldmine for anything that you want to look for.
So you're sort of just looking for what they forgot to delete, kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a mix of what they forgot to delete, what's meant to be in there but isn't released yet, and it's similar to when CIG take these ships that are announced and upcoming, and they fly it around in the verse to these streamers, so they can see, oh, look at this pretty ship, and they'll have it in the build, but they won't have players on it, and I can just rip that, put it in a modded build, and then show it off to everyone else who doesn't have a chance to look at it otherwise.
One of the things I remember, I can't remember who it was, and I'm pretty sure it was SitCon last year. Someone on stage specifically was stating that they'd finally figured out how people like you were finding certain ships way before, and they were like, how we finally, like, we know how we're going to crack down and, like, change a few things so you can't get as much information. It's just when you were talking there, it just made me remember something they were saying last year.
Did you want me to comment on that?
I don't know. I was just that was a belly ramble moment.
Well, should we talk about it since it's come up? CIG since CitizenCon 2018, that was not a good year for them. They left so much in there, and that was really when I first started digging my teeth in and doing the modding. And if you remember right, that was when we had just showing off Idris's blowing up and F8 lightnings flying around on the subreddit that no one else could use, and it wasn't a it wasn't a good year for that. And that kind of it popped up to CIG that we should probably actually do something about this. So when it came to the mole, which is I believe what you're talking about, that was one of the few ones I haven't caught prior to release, and that was when they changed how they make these builds, so it's a lot better at hiding or even just not putting something in at all. And since then, I've adapted and worked out how this new system works, so I can really get back.
Oh, you cut out there. You still there?
It's just a lot more difficult than it was before.
So it sounds it's a bit like an arms race. They're developing new ways to stop you, and you're finding new ways to circumvent, like them stopping of you.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. One of the things I've heard you say quite a few times on SC Leaks is that you've found evidence that something's been worked on. Can you just sort of elaborate specifically what you mean when you say you found evidence?
Yeah, so I'll take, what should I take it as an example? I'll not use an example. Take when someone asks to say the Aaron Halo. Someone asked me about the Aaron Halo a few streams ago, so I'll use that as an example. The Aaron Halo, as you and probably everyone else already knows, they're planning on having these checkpoint stations dotted throughout it, right?
Yeah.
And what I can use as evidence is I can look at all the files to do with the Aaron Halo, and I can say, okay, this doesn't belong here. This is new. This isn't in game. This has had some work on it. So I can see that something is there that isn't meant to be there, or something's been updated by when it was last or edited, built, you name it. And there's a myriad of things you can look at. It might just be stuff that's meant to be there, stuff that's new. Maybe it might be some things removed or something changed. It's anything that's different from the norm, if you kind of get what I mean there.
So you're looking at the files that much, you can realise, hey, these files have changed size, or there's new files there, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it might even be to the point of, I'm not sure, I'm gonna go ahead and spawn this in and see if I can find any differences as well.
So it could be a visual difference that you wouldn't even normally notice.
Yeah, that too.
Okay. So with this last question then, I'll just hand over the reins, so to speak, to you, and just ask what sort of things you found recently, what's juicy, and what is hot off the press.
In speaking of hot off the press, I believe someone posted this on the subreddit before I had a chance to put it out, but we've got an actual name for the RSI gunboat now.
Oh, good, because gunboat was not good.
The gunboat's a pretty awful name. We from multiple sources, we've got audio files, and we've got a sort of confirmation from a CIG guy. So personally, I'm 90% ish sure that it's now called the RSI Perseus.
Perseus?
Yeah. And we've also had extra confirmations of the Mercury and Star Runner as well, because they've also now got audio files to do with them for the expo.
It's good news to hear about the Perseus then, because I think it was 2 weeks ago on your stream when you were saying it was actually just going to be called Gunboat. I was like, no, hopefully that changes.
So the story on that actually. So we'd initially heard from one of Hater's sources that it was going to be called the Odin. And we thought, okay, that's a cool name. We'll stick with that. And it came to light. We were told by someone at CIG that no, it's not called the Odin, but they couldn't tell us what it was.
So Odin maybe was what is it they
like
call
a
it?
Working name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it ended up not being called the Odin, and we thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense. RSI has a convention of naming their ship after constellations.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up thinking, oh, no idea what it could be, and then we find RSI Perseus as an audio file, and we got some extra confirmation as well. So 90% sure it's the Perseus.
90%
Obviously,
sure it's the Perseus.
Could change, but if it's in an audio file, it's very likely to not.
So that's has come to the end of the questions I've got. Is there anything else you want to say, or?
Not really. I enjoy modding. It's a hobby for me, and I'm blessed by the fact that I can bring what I love doing to everyone else and show them that CIG really are working on things. They just can't show you it at the time, and yeah.
It's a great hobby to have, and it is very beneficial for us, and the rest of the community are sitting there deprived of information and want as much as possible. So you're doing good work for us. And with that, that was the end of the interview. So I'm going to say I hope you have all enjoyed this video. Definitely, if you're deprived of information or feel deprived of information, definitely look up Piggles. He's a great source of information, and yeah, the accuracy is quite high, so yeah, cannot recommend SC Leagues any higher. Thanks for all, blah 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 blah, getting tongue tied. Thanks everyone for watching, hope you've all enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.